Welcome back from the frozen north in Colorado and in Kansas City. It is Monday night Q&A. Welcome to RGR Football. This is going to be fun, and I know you guys have things you want to talk about because you're frustrated, you're pissed off, and you're waiting for a trade, and we'll talk about all of it tonight. He's Dan Harms. I'm Ryan Tracy. Welcome to RGR Football. This is Ryan going rogue because I'm an idiot, and I like to get out on the edge. So we're going to do something funky for you. We're going to answer all your questions tonight. You guys are driving this bus, and we're just answering your questions. So throw them in the chat, put some question marks before them. Every super chat will get an answer, and we'll cover every topic that we can tonight, as well as a little bit of speculation about what could be coming down in the next 24 hours, because there's rumors out there. So we're going to get started with Pono, because he is right off the top. Perfect heading for today's discussion. The deal needs to get done by tomorrow and acquire true number one. Yes, this is a glaring problem. Rashid is our only hope. Yes, he sounds like Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? I have a special guest that can probably give us a little insight on this. So without further ado, you guys, just because you want to know about trade prospects, welcome in Gary McKenzie to the Monday Night Q&A. How are you, Gary?
What is up, guys? I feel like with it being a tough week, Chiefs coming off a tough week, I feel like that friend that stops by and visits you in the hospital while you're down.
Well, but I'm just curled up in the hoodie. It's okay.
Right now, the Chiefs draft capital next season, I think they have 5 picks. They don't have a ton of cap room. I think they have enough to make some moves, but honestly speaking, I would not be shocked at all if this group, even though they do need a true number one receiver, if they don't get a deal done tomorrow, I would not be surprised.
Yeah. What's your gut tell you, Dan?
Oh, my gut tells me that they're not doing anything. Like this is that they're going down with the ship, because we've seen them be stubborn, and Andy Reid is the king of being stubborn at times. He thinks that he's not wrong in this situation. Now, obviously, 24 hours can make me look like an idiot. They could trade for somebody later, but my gut tells me that they are going to stand pat because they think they can get it done.
I'm gonna go the tinfoil route. I got up and I had oatmeal with the kids like I do every morning. But then I decided to get spicy and I roasted some jalapenos. I got everything ready for lunch, and now I'm just breathing fire. So I'm just gonna go for it, because the more people that I talk to around the country, a bunch of my buddies that cover different teams, they're hearing little whispers, and it keeps coming back to the guy that we thought might come here in the offseason. And I want to show you the contract for one DeAnthony Hopkins, because a buddy of mine in that market thinks that it's a possibility. And I only want to tell you guys this as Dan gets up to leave before he pukes. Is the only way that it's a possibility is because of the structure of the deal. And I went and I had to look because I wasn't familiar with this. And this is what I want to share for all of you guys that are hoping that this could happen. There's only one way, and that's because of this number. He got a bonus, and he has a 1.1 base salary, half of which has been paid out in 8 game checks already. So that is the only way. What you tie yourself to is a base salary next year of 8. And then you have these void years that should stay with the originator of the contract. So in all intents and purposes, it's a viable possibility. You're going to take yourself down to about $1.5 million in cap space. That's not enough for the Chiefs, so they'd probably have to do a different deal. But according to my guy, who is in the Titans building on a daily basis, he thinks that this is something that, while wild, is something that could happen, and he likes the idea because he's looking to get as much draft capital as possible. And that's what I think the crux comes down to. I'm not willing to give up a first-round pick for DeAnthony Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, sorry. I'm not willing to give up a second and a third. Like, I might give up a second alone, but that gets into a complication about the left tackle situation next year. So let's start with Gary, because I know how you feel, Dan. Is DeAndre Hopkins worth a third-round pick?
I mean, looking at that contract, the Chiefs could hold on to him for a couple of years, and who knows what happens with those void years. We were talking before we got on here how the Chiefs needed that boundary receiver. I mean, the big body guy that can go down the sideline. And before he even said his name, he was the first player that I thought of where, if the Chiefs did spend some capital, I wouldn't go punch a hole through drywall. Yeah.
So Dan will cover that.
Yeah.
So if they make this move, it would be at one of their draft picks that they don't have a lot of next season. I am not familiar enough with the Titans roster to know if there is anywhere where the Chiefs have a plethora of talent that they could share with the Titans, maybe to lessen the load of that draft capital they'd have to give up. But this is, in my opinion, honestly, the biggest splash the Chiefs could make that is also the most realistic in terms of a trade happening tomorrow.
My big thing is the rumors this afternoon, and Dan, I know you would not be happy with this trade, but if this is what the rumors are going towards, moving away from Richie James, who I think, as we've talked through this, you need to boil down how many guys are on the field. Running 6 and 7 guys on the field is demonstrably negative in this case. Does doing that and maybe moving Richie in part of a deal, does that make any sense to you?
I mean, it does. It makes a lot of sense because, one, Richie James can't play on the outside either. Like, we're talking about receivers that are playing slot. Like, they've made Rashee Rice into a power slot, who was by trade an ex-receiver at SMU. He was an outside weapon. And they have now said, well, we're going to scheme you up on the slot. We're going to put Sky Moore, who is, my opinion, best out of the slot, outside.
Agreed.
We're going to play Kadarius Toney, who can't really separate on the outside. Half of his snaps are also going to be from the outside. So we can focus on training you as a power slot receiver. And Richie James enters this offense as a slot receiver. So there's problems at the slot for the Chiefs. So yeah, making a move to get rid of one of the potential slot weapons to bring in an actual outside weapon makes sense. But I can't, for the life of me, give anything up for DeAndre Hopkins. I know he had a fantastic day. That's awesome. Like, two of his, one was an obvious penalty. He pushed the guy down. He literally pushed him down. The other one was a push off as well. And then the other one, yeah, it was a nice little double move. But I've seen Demarcus Robinson do the same thing. Okay. So you won't, and Gabe Davis, by the way, who is not a very good NFL receiver, has done some of the same things. When I say not very good, I mean like he's a 3 or 4, and he's just been inconsistent most of his career. So we're talking about day 1, day 2 draft capital for a guy who's 31 years old. If I'm going to spend a day 2 draft pick on somebody, it's Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
Period. He's younger, and he's thrived on the outside in his career, and he can actually separate. And he has the speed to win after the catch in this offense.
And it forces Rashee to the outside.
It doesn't have to, because he can play on the outside.
No, but it would. Terry can go inside and force Rashee out, where he's naturally more prepped to make an impact right now than trying to force feed him inside and run these curls and run these things to try to counteract all the attention that Travis is getting. And I think that's really what they're it all comes down to this. Defenses look at Travis first, so does Patrick. So you got to give him something else to look at, Gary. And I don't know where else we would go.
Yeah, about McLaurin, though, I mean, the Commanders are 3-5, and I haven't heard too much news regarding them going into, fire sale mode. The Titans are there. And I can't really think of too many other teams that are at a point in their season or a point in their decision-making process where they're just ready to let guys loose. They've already given up on the season. And that's the biggest problem. And that's also why the NFL trade deadline, puts the dead in deadline, because they have so many teams they're trying to fight, for their chance to make it to the playoffs. You never know what happens. So that's why there's never really very many deals on the trade deadline.
And I know, folks, you're all looking for it. Everybody in Chiefs Kingdom is. That's where we're at. I think in the end, Richie James is probably moved for an asset that can be then used in the draft. That's what it feels like it's going to happen to me. I wanted to share when I hear from somebody that I trust that a possibility is actually out there. I just wanted to share that because a lot of people are asking about it. But Pono has a good question in who else can restructure in order to gain some cap space. And that's the thing, Pono. Like, even if you traded off MVS, you would lose some salary there, but you're not adding to your total viability of this wide receiver room by trading a guy who has been contributing consistently. Yeah. Is it a lot? No, but he's been out there. And so that's where I come down. And I don't know. I'm a little disappointed in the progress of it. And I do think if they can tighten down the snaps for a few guys, including Rashee Rice and Sky Moore, and I do think you have to keep feeding Sky Moore, that can turn those guys around and get some of this stuff evolving. Let's all remember Rashee's played 8 career games in the NFL. He is still a rookie. Let's let him get there. Now, folks, we're going to answer every one of your super chats. Throw those in, and I am going to hand the show over to Dan here shortly. So if you have something that you want to get to me, you better do it pretty quick because I'm on a time frame tonight. But so Dan, where do you want to go next?
Well, I mean, we can just keep going down here with the questions. I think the last thing I want to reiterate is obviously, ideally, situationally, I'd like to get a Terry McLaurin type player, but that's not always how this works. Like Gary was talking about, it's just never going to be an ideal situation for trading these players. Now, on the flip side, yes, would I be unhappy with the DeAndre Hopkins trade? Yes, but I think if we can put this in a glass case, in a vacuum, what does it bring to the team? Okay, one, it's a guy who will draw coverage to the outside without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the truth of the matter. Okay, he brings gravity to the situation because of what he's shown he can do throughout his career, and I know that he still believes that he's every bit of the player he's been in his career, which is fine. That's great. That's fantastic. Believe in yourself all you want, but also it allows them to keep Rashee Rice in the slot because it feels like they want to keep him there. Honestly, it feels like they don't want to put too much on his plate. That they want him to be the guy that is the release valve when there's open middle of the field. They want to put the ball in his hands. If they don't put too much on his plate, that helps his growth this year and then allows them to then grow off season next year. That's what the hope is. That's what the hope's always been. So yes, would I be unhappy with it personally? I would, but I think I also have to understand that there are some benefits to a situation where he's on the team or some player that can play the X position better than MVS can do, brings to this team.
I'm with you.
So back to Rice, and this is one thing that if I'm taking a moment to vent, it's just that this whole notion, and this has been going on the whole time Andy Reid's been coaching the NFL, but that it takes a long, long time for a wide receiver to catch on. But there are other teams in the NFL, other coaches in the NFL, where we've seen this movement of first-year wide receivers come in and make a huge impact. And so there's a little frustration on my part where you go and you look at the metrics and the separation and things like that, and Rashee Rice is doing really well when he ranks against his peers. Why is he not getting more opportunities than he is currently? I mean, I think he was targeted, 3 or 4 times versus the Broncos. One of those he turned into a huge play. And we mentioned earlier that it seems like there's too many wide receivers in this group vying for a spot where people can't get warm. They can't get loose. They're not getting enough reps. And maybe it's time to push some of the cooks out of the kitchen and let some of these wide receivers have a more solidified role in the offense and see where that goes.
I like the kitchen analogy.
Yeah.
You're picking up what we're putting down. I'll tell you that.
I don't think we actually answered that question. Yeah, I was about to say.
I was just going to say, yeah. Quinn, not snaps, not 30% or less. I think he needs to get 30% targets or more. I think that they need to take a game where they choose to give him the target share that they need to get him going. You can throw 3-4 targets at Justin Watson. You can do the same at MVS. They've got the experience that they're going to come up with their normal ration of catches. We can discuss how many drops go in there as well, but they're going to do what they got to do. I think you got to force feed Sky and Rashee. And honestly, use Travis as the exploitation of the defense as you can. You know the Dolphins are going to double him. I would start this week. I would say, hey, welcome to Germany. We're going to feed you over and over and over. Enjoy the pigskin.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we're seeing right now is a bit of frustration with what's going on. The Chiefs, and right now, I think fans are really mad at Sky Moore because the Chiefs pumped him up as a guy who was taking a big step. He spent all offseason with Patrick Mahomes, and we're not seeing the fruits of that labor. We're not seeing the targets go that way either. Okay, there's something to be said about a lot of this, not a lot, but some of this also falls on the quarterback. Okay, there are times, and we've shown you, it's been said, Pat, where Sky's open, and Pat just doesn't throw him the football for whatever reason. And then he reiterates in the press conference that he has trust in these guys and he's going to keep throwing them the football. But what's the disconnect here is that he's not getting the football. Let's be honest about this. 2-3 targets a game, that's not getting the football. It's just not. So what's happening behind the scenes where if Patrick Mahomes is lying up there and saying he trusts Sky Moore, what's going on? What's the difference here? Because if he's not running the routes that he is supposed to be running, that needs to be addressed. It's week 8. This can't keep happening. And Andy Reid said that he saw, some guys running the wrong routes. Well, if they're running the wrong routes, what's the fix here? What's the fix? If they're still running the wrong routes, why are they still doing that? Okay. And I was talking about this before with you guys earlier. They get instant feedback from Patrick Mahomes when he throws them the football, and if they're wrong. Right after the pass breakup to MVS, you see Mahomes motioning to him, come down the field. You don't get that instant feedback from the quarterback if you're not getting the football. So we can all be frustrated about the drops, the inconsistencies. If you're not getting the football consistently thrown at you, how often do you think you're going to make a catch? How often do you think you're going to drop the football? When the one time that he gets like a legitimate downfield throw, it's an over to the shoulder catch where he's being grabbed on with his left hand and he has to adjust to the football in the air. How many times out of 10 do you think you drop that when that's like your first time that you've gotten the ball? Almost all game. It's tough. And yes, I'm making a little bit of excuse there for Sky Moore. He needs to make that catch. I'll be honest, he just does. But we got to look at both sides. Have to.
Well, and what's the thing that we've been saying? Get on the jugs machine. Get reps.
Yeah.
Get that volume of catches into your hands. And it's the same thing whether it's coming from the jugs machine or coming from your Hall of Fame quarterback. You just got to get it done. Good to see you, Kathy, Brenda. Nice to see everybody in here. We're going to continue down with the questions, and let's see what's next from Seth. As a coach myself, I would have sat Mahomes and played Gabbert. Should have been good enough to beat the Broncos. In retrospect, I can see what you're saying. At the time, 70% of Patrick Mahomes is better than anybody else except maybe Josh Allen. So I can't see Andy Reid ever doing that.
If Patrick comes up to you as the coach and says, I'm good, you going to question him? You're going to say, no, I'm going to sit down today, Pat. No, I'm not trying to question you as a coach, Seth. I'm just saying, like, if Patrick Mahomes came up to you and said, I'm good to go, okay? Are you going to say in that moment, I'm starting Blaine Gabbert in this football game? I don't think so. But if you would have, I give you lots of respect because that'd be a tough decision to make. And it would give you a much bigger way out of a losing football game if that's what ended up happening.
I think the Seth's question, though, too, is would Blaine Gabbert have given the Chiefs a chance to win that game? And, just kind of thinking of it from that angle, I don't think that, like Dan said, you would look Mahomes in the face and say, no, we're going with Gabbert. But I think if Gabbert played a great game, sure, the Chiefs could have won in that case. But that's not guaranteed. And playing the odds, like we said, is 70% Mahomes is going to play a great game more often than Blaine Gabbert. And that game on Sunday, it felt like the longest game I've ever watched. And I think part of that was because just this eternal hope that Mahomes gives me when he's on the field that, okay, this drive, it's going to turn around, or this moment, Mahomes is going to do something. And you just kept waiting and you kept hoping, and hope can be a dangerous thing sometimes. Fortunately, us Chiefs fans, we haven't had to deal with the painful side of hope too much because Mahomes has really come through. But I feel like that's what made the game seem like it took forever, is because I kept hoping and nothing happened. And then I'd hope again and nothing happened. It just kept going on and on. It was like torture, really.
Torture's a good way
I
to
feel
put it.
I feel it.
All right. I'm going to step back a little bit, Dan. You go ahead and take the next one in a minute or two. I'm going to have to step away, folks. So want to make this push. I've got a family thing going on, so I'm going to have to go take care of that. But like, sub, hit the bell. Make sure you're tuned in for Gary later in the week, Dan on Wednesday, Seth tomorrow. We have all the normal content for you, even though the team leaves for Germany on Thursday evening, as I understand it. I would not be looking forward to making that trip, but hey, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's not going to be a fun thing. But as we get ready for Ryan's departure, Seth, thank you very much again. I hope you have success in your coaching career, and if you could look Patrick Mahomes in the face and tell him that he's not going to play that football game, I have mad props and respect for you, my guy. So thanks for the question. What's going on, Cody? Nice to see you, man. Can we call MVS Applebee's 2 for $20 consistently? Why they still have it for Mahomes to trust receivers? Now that, oh man, that's a fantastic thing. Now, I will say that MVS's game against the Chargers would go against that nickname for what it's worth, and he does have the propensity to have better days, but it's tough all around. So what does need to happen for Mahomes to trust receivers? Well, I think we kind of got a little bit of a glimpse with MVS himself, who is a veteran receiver. He did not come back to the football on a route where you need to, on a curl route or any comeback route. You have to come back to the football. You have to, because especially if you're like Ryan was talking about yesterday, if you're dropping into a zone and there's a guy playing off coverage on you, guess what? As soon as you break down, it's time to go. He's getting down. He's coming downhill. So what do you have to do? You have to keep that separation. Little tiny things that are happening, whether it's Mahomes looking to his second read and it's not exactly where he expects it to be. Sometimes that's on Patrick. That's not necessarily on the wide receiver, because not everything is going to be exactly the way you expect it to be and hope it is. Sometimes your eyes just have to find the guy that's open in your second read. If he's in the realm of possibility situations, you got to throw the football. You can't just keep holding on to the ball. Otherwise, we're going to see what happened yesterday. So they need to run routes correctly. They need to come back to the football. Sometimes Patrick needs to let it sling. He's not really doing that. What about you, Gary? What do you think?
Yeah, I just got one word, and that's reps. I mean, these guys have got to practice together. I think there was a interview of Tom Brady after he won his 4th or 5th Super Bowl, and is whenever he was throwing the ball to Julian Edelman, whenever Edelman first started coming up. And they asked him, what made you guys kind of crescendo at the end of the season here where you're playing your best offensive football? And Tom Brady gave him a number. It was something like 156. And the interviewer was like, what does that mean? He said, I had 156 practices with this team, with this wide receiver group, and every single one of them built up to this point. So that's what's going to take for the Chiefs offense, is just the repetition. And we keep bringing it up. The Chiefs are sending 4, 5, 6 receivers out there, and they're getting 2 or 3 targets a game. It's hard to get that repetition and that feedback when you're not getting more opportunities. And so that's one thing that maybe after this Broncos game will help the Chiefs kind of come to that conclusion, is that fewer cooks in the kitchen once again. Let's get some guys some reps and see what they can go with this. But right now you want to kind of roll with your best 4 or 5 guys and quit with all the, limited looks for every single receiver on the team other than Richie James.
I'm with you.
I'm going to take one that was directed to me before I step away, and I want to get your guys' opinions. So sorry to jump the line here, guys, but Daniel's should they trade for either Kyle Pitts or Danielle Hunter? I really think Pitts would be a solid number 2 opposite Kelsey. Yeah, if you're running 12 all the time, I mean, yes, you can split them both out, but it's a lot to invest in that particular position. And quite frankly, if you can get Terry Fontenot drunk enough to say yes to trading away Kyle Pitts, I'll be very, very, very impressed. I'll pick up the bill even, because that would be the demise of that organization. There's 2 guys that I think you cannot part with right now, and that is Kyle Pitts and Drake London in the pass game, and obviously Bijan in the run game. My guy Ritter stepped on it again this week. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what he's doing. Even I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe Dez needs to change the pace. The only 3 guys that you don't trade on that roster right now are those 3 guys. So I don't think that happens. Danielle Hunter, I think it would be interesting, but quite frankly, I don't know that you need him now. I think the way that the Chiefs front is running, I think you're good. I would not waste that trade right now. So
I'm with you. I agree. And again, honestly, if I'm trading for Kyle Pitts, I'm making him a full-time wide receiver. Just there's real no point. He plays on the outside enough. I now would use it as a year saying, look, if we trade for this guy, you're going to pretty much take the year to learn. Okay. Because you're going to play wide receiver next year, buddy. You're big, you're fast, you're not the best blocker in the world. And to be honest with you, I'd rather have the mismatch against smaller corners. But I would do that. But that's me.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting way to fix the Chiefs' boundary problem.
All right. I am going to take out the wide receiver questions. I think we've covered it a ton.
Yeah.
There's some chats waiting, folks. So, Dan, thank you for running the show, folks. Have a great night. Gary, thanks for sitting in with us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun.
I'll catch y'all later.
Good luck tonight.
Yep, see you, Ryan.
Thank you. I need it, folks. Have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, guys. So, appreciate that question, Daniel. We're going to get going here with some more questions. I'll try to pick up the pace a little bit because Ryan and I like to talk a lot, and I don't want to keep you all here the entire night as well. So appreciate the question, Cole. Do you think Hardman should be taken off returns? So I'll put this to you first, Gary. I want to see your opinion on the Hardman situation after the muffed punt yesterday.
So Hardman is, and this is more or less my personality in terms of how I want to see the football game go.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of special teams, I am fairly conservative. I know that you have the chance of Hardman returning one more so than probably any other player on the Chiefs roster, except for maybe Kadarius Toney. But to me, the risk that he brings up, he has had some fumbles back there over the years. And to me, I really liked Darnell Washington back there. He seemed sure-handed. He would catch the ball. He would go upfield, not go backwards. And I think sometimes that's all you really need. But obviously the Chiefs brass disagreed. And the only other kind of wrinkle I want to throw into this is that if you take Hardman off returns, I think that your choices between bringing Washington back and vacating another roster spot or using Kadarius Toney back there, who the Chiefs have already seemingly shown that they're not interested in putting Toney in positions to get hurt. So it's really Hardman or Washington. Which do you prefer? The guy that seems like a sure thing, won't get you much production. The guy that maybe has some risk will get you more production.
Yeah, and we have to remember that, McCole Hardman still is essentially a punt returner. Like, he was the punt returner before he got hurt last year too. Like, he was their punt returner going, and that's the thing. He's going to still be that guy. And I think that the more mature McCole Hardman that we're seeing now is up to it. Personally, it's going to happen, and unfortunately, we're seeing it happen a lot more in Kansas City than a lot of other places with muffs. Even Washington did have a muffed punt. He was able to get it back, I think, in one of the 2 games or 3 games that he played it as. But you're playing with fire a little bit, just switching out punt returners. Again, going back to the comfort thing, let them get comfortable. McCole Hardman, it was a big spot too. He was trying to make a play. It's not an excuse to drop the football, but we got to remember that this is a rhythm sport too at times, and Hardman was trying to really make a play. So I give him a little bit of credit for taking the credit for it, but got to have your eye on the football, man. Appreciate you, Cole. All right, Michael, man, how's it going? Why don't we have an actual former NFL wide receiver coach coaching these young players? Connor Embry needs to be held accountable for this mess. I don't necessarily disagree with the idea that Embry might not be the best situation, the best guy to handle it. Greg Lewis, I think, to an extent, also has some questions about him too. Like, what development happened in Kansas City even before Connor Embry? Greg Lewis was a former wide receiver in the NFL, and they weren't developing wide receivers then. Like, I feel like this idea that it's just on Embry is a little bit misleading, and there's just a whole construct. They had Tyreek Hill, maybe the greatest athlete to ever play in the NFL in terms of at the wide receiver position. What he does is different. It's completely different from what we see anywhere else. Outside of him, what have the Chiefs developed at wide receiver in a decade? What have they done? They haven't really been able to do that. And they've brought in, Jeremy Maclin, Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They drafted a bunch of guys who didn't really develop into much. So this is not just a this year problem. the Chiefs have been trying to cover up some of their issues for years with bringing in veterans and trading for guys, and they got lucky with Tyreek Hill. But I don't know what's going to have to happen for them to actually develop wide receivers.
So, Dan, to piggyback on that, bringing talent into Kansas City, wide receiver talent into Kansas City, that falls on Brett Veach. And we can have some frustration with Embry, we can have some frustration with Lewis, but at the end of the day, these are NFL players, and they're going to perform if they have the talent. There is some truth to coaching them up, but I read this funny tweet about the reason why the Chiefs haven't been able to draft a quality wide receiver is because they focus too much on the player's character, and all of the great wide receivers are crazy and a little bit out there, a little wild. So that's why they haven't been able to land that guy, because they're not taking that walk on the wild side with the wide receiver position.
Well, that would be that'd be one thing. That would be one thing. So we're going to take a little bit of break from the wide receiver questions, guys. We've done a lot of wide receiver talk right now. We'll get back to them in a little bit, but thank you, Michael, for your question about Embry. It makes a lot of sense to take a look at it and try to understand what's going on there. And if you guys really want a question answered about a wide receiver, like a trade or something like that, make sure his super chat. We'll get that question answered. But we got to get to some other topics and not spend the entire hour on wide receivers here. So Abu, I apologize about that. Gafar Jr., what do the Chiefs do now? Also, I do feel the Chiefs needed this loss. So right now, it's about getting back on the wagon, right? Like that's what this is about. You after a loss, the Chiefs do have one of the best records after they lose, just like they have after a bye. They come back strong after they have that loss. They are favored right now by 2.5 points over the Miami Dolphins in Germany. So right now, it's about reflection. They have to look themselves in the mirror and realize that there's some things that they have been doing that aren't working. The defense has been fantastic. It's been great all season long. It's been very good. Lean into it a little bit. Use what you have on the defensive side and start to get your offense a little bit more physical, because they're physical on defense. Like they didn't do a fantastic job letting the Broncos grind out some of those drives, but they were on the field a lot. I give them a lot of credit for what they did. So right now, this time is about reflection, getting back at it, being a little bit more physical going forward, especially against a team that might be just as finesse as they are in terms of their offensive play style. In the Miami Dolphins, maybe hit them in the mouth a little bit. So what do you think, Gary?
Yeah, I think that the Chiefs, just like you said, they need to look in the mirror. And part of that is looking in the mirror is understanding who you are at this point in the season. And in years past, the Chiefs could have gotten away throwing the ball up in the air down the field, having a fumble here or there. But this team offensively is not quite as good as they once were. And, that's documented for everyone to see. But what this team also has with their advantage is that they're also defensively much better than they ever were before. And that loss versus the Broncos, I think you could attribute that 100% to the turnovers in that game. Mm-hmm. So what the Chiefs need to do when they look in the mirror is they need to identify that, yes, they do have a good offense. I'm not saying that they have a bad offense. They're just not as good as they once were. But their defense more than makes up for that. So it's paramount for this team to run a precision-style offense that also takes care of the ball. If the Chiefs do this, we saw it. 6 wins in a row. Just super easy. Mm-hmm. Mahomes has to transition from the quarterback that feels like he's always had to do it all, making these crazy plays, to a quarterback who flows with the game, who understands the situations. And, if this, at this point in the season, I've said this multiple times, at this point in the season, this is the biggest problem with the Chiefs, is that Mahomes needs to shore things up and play better, then my money is on the Chiefs. If that's their biggest problem right now, aside from the wide receivers, then things could be so much worse. So what the Chiefs do now, they look in the mirror and they just win, baby. Like the late, great Al Davis said. I hate to bring him up, with this being video, but it's true.
Yeah, it's interesting because last year they were just win at the end of the season. Like it was just find a way to win. Then they did that all the way to the Super Bowl. So it's still a little bit of overreaction at this point, in my opinion, that the sky's falling. It's really not. And they're going to be all right, I think. They just got to figure it out. But so appreciate that question. What's going on, preachers? When do we get to the realization that the play calling is inconsistent and soft? And is the EB, is this the EB hangover? So I don't necessarily think that this is like an EB thing personally. There's something that he brought that is missed. That's a fact. And the way that he interacts with players, the way he holds them accountable. It's coaching is different. You know, Matt Nagy was in Kansas City before. Like, this is not a new phase of coaching. And he was there last year too. Like, this isn't just, it's not like a whole new area that they're into right now. But some of the inconsistencies in the play calling are bad. Like, let's be honest. Like, they don't have some of the short area prowess that they used to have before Patrick Mahomes got here. They don't have that run game physicality in the short area. So I don't think it's an EB hangover personally, but I think we've talked extensively, honestly, about how the play calling can be inconsistent at times, at best, and at best times it looks good, but they find a way to fumble a lot of things up in the red zone and in short yardage situations. They gotta figure that out, definitely. Thanks, preachers, appreciate it.
So looking back at Andy Reid's career with Kansas City, there's only been 3 games where the Chiefs have played, while Andy Reid was the head coach, have played the same team twice in 3 weeks. 3 times. Andy Reid's record in those games is 0-3. So, you know, the fact that the offense might have looked soft or inconsistent, it's really hard in the NFL to have that short turnaround and beat an opponent twice. And, you know, maybe in that game there wasn't enough creativity or there's too much creativity. Either way, the Broncos defense outcoached Andy Reid and the Chiefs offense that day. And whether they were too soft or they had too much finesse, either way, the same outcome was that they got their butts whooped.
Absolutely. Got to figure that out. Thank you for the question, Tyler. Is there too much on Mahomes? Seems like if he's not Superman, this game happens. So it's not necessarily it's not necessarily misconstrued that there's a lot on Mahomes' plate, but he's been able to handle it his entire career. This isn't something new. I think that they put a lot on him because he can handle a lot. And sometimes their confidence in that and in Patrick's ability in himself gets them into trouble. And we've seen this over the course of the last few seasons, honestly, or we talk about, well, Mahomes isn't playing great right now and things aren't looking right on the screen. They eventually figure it out. This is the time before the bye that teams need to use to figure out the problems. It's coming up on the bye. Okay. So they have another game to maybe fix some of the stuff before they get to actually take a week off and say, this is what we have to do. They have to go forward. They'll take out whatever doesn't work, and then they'll go forward doing what does work. After the bye, this team is always a much better football team than they have been previously early in the season, whether it's offensively or defensively. So, yes, there's a lot on Patrick Mahomes. He can handle all of that, and the team right now is going through what every good team does. They have struggles before the bye. They use that bye. They use the time before the bye to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then after the bye, I think we'll see a much smoother offense than what we've seen right now.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you there, Dan. One thing I want to say about Mahomes, I think that he has his moments where he does try to do too much, and we talked about that earlier. For instance, the first game versus the Broncos, they had the ball around the 20-yard line, and he was pressured and threw a really awful interception. I don't know if he was targeting Sky Moore or Rashee Rice over there. Ball got intercepted, and Mahomes all throughout his career, whether it was at Texas Tech or starting out at Kansas City, he's never had a really top flight defense that he's had to work, that he's gotten the opportunity to work with. And so part of that is learning, my defense can stop the opponent. I don't have to score a touchdown in every drive. I can throw this ball away. If I'm pressured, we can take the field goal. I don't have to try to go for the touchdown. And that's kind of some of the stuff that I think Mahomes has done, honestly, a really great job of through his career is just going to the next level of that. Understanding he doesn't have to do it all. And I think that really, if you want to complain about Mahomes, it's kind of like complaining if you were dating a supermodel. I mean, really, what are you nitpicking at? It's just small things, and this is just for Mahomes the next step of development he could take and learning how to win another way, and that's really what I'm kind of presenting.
Yeah, it definitely does come down to they're always going to have to learn to win differently in every single season. Not one season's the same as the other. They're going to have different struggles this year. Feels like they put a lot of chips on a wide receiver room that they thought would develop and look a little bit differently than it does now, and that's not happening. So guess what? Back to the drawing board. Figure out how you're going to go forward with that and get it done. That's what this is about now. So I'm with you. I appreciate that, Tyler. Again, thank you for the question. All right, Kip, what's going on third down? Why did they take the ball out of Mahomes' hands? And if they do some gadget plays, Gary, why don't you give me a little explanation to this while we figure out what's going on here?
I am right there with you on third down frustrations. For me, if it's third and medium, third and long, obviously you're going to want to throw the ball with Mahomes. Don't be throwing it to Kadarius Toney to pass the ball downfield. Travis Kelce already lost his opportunity to throw the ball over again whenever he threw that interception versus the Giants several years ago. For me, my third down frustrations come from the fact that Isaiah Pacheco, I think that in his career in Kansas City so far, he's only had maybe one or two rushes for a loss. If it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, hand him the ball. Just give him the ball and let him do what he does. You don't have to get cute. You don't have to throw passes to the boundary where there's only one blocker that happens to be a rookie that's not your best blocker on the team, like Rashee Rice did whenever he was trying to block. I can't remember who it was on the defense for the Broncos, and they threw the ball out to the flat for McKinnon. It would have worked if Rashee would have been able to pull his block off, but that's not putting your players in the best position to succeed. It should have been someone who has a little more experience blocking NFL cornerbacks in that situation. So I don't know. I don't understand what the Chiefs do on third down sometimes, and it could be just that it's not working. And if it works, I love it. If it doesn't work, I hate it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It's always in the eye of the beholder, right? Like when we see something happen and we don't like it, like, well, that's a bad play call. If it works out, guess what? It's genius. So we have to remember that too. But I'll be honest, I never want to see them throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage on a 3rd and short ever. Like that's not how I want to see it happen. And I don't care what look you're getting in that situation. The problem is that you're throwing it behind to go forward. That's a bad situation. I also don't really want to see Kadarius Toney running inside the offensive line directly into someone's face. That's not what I want to see. My answer is that they're too much of a finesse team. They don't have a physical mentality or identity on the offensive side outside of Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know what's going on with the run game. He's clearly a physical guy, and I would just like to see them be able to get under center, still spread them out. You still bring out 11 personnel, bring that fear that you're going to throw the football, but get downhill, get off the ball, and move some of these players. You're a better offensive line than they're playing out to be. So I think that they just overthink it. They just overthink everything sometimes. And when you're trying to succeed at the highest level in the NFL and they're having a game like they did against the Broncos where everything seemed to go wrong, play calling was a part of that too. So always have to be a little bit more understanding of the situation. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best solution. Run the ball up the middle, or find a different way to throw the ball quickly. It doesn't have to in front of the line of scrimmage, not behind it. 2 simple things. Figure it out. All right, guys. We got about another 15 minutes in here. We'll try to speed up and get your last questions. I know we're not going to talk a ton more about the wide receivers. We did a lot of that at the beginning. And as things come out in the next 20 hours, we'll definitely be live with you guys if anything were to happen, if any trades were to happen, things like that. Yes, the Chiefs are shopping shopping Richie James, and that's going to be something we'll keep an eye on as it unfolds. But appreciate the question, Kip. And we'll move on here to Sean. Thank you very much for your question. Can we just give the defense more props? Absolutely. We definitely should. How good is this defense when they don't skip a beat without Bolton as well as Tranquil and Gave parts of this game? Yeah, we talked about this quite a bit yesterday after our initial rants. Like, we have to remember that these linebackers that are playing, they were able to really still be successful playing against the run and holding the Broncos to, I think it was 3.87 yards per play, which is not good for any offense or something like that. It wasn't a good offensive day for the Broncos, and they were able to make them be not. I'm just speaking out of turn here. I'm tripping over my words. So yes, give the defense absolutely more props. They did a great job of rallying to the football, rallying behind Drew Tranquil and Willie Gay, and then it had to be Leo Chanel and Tranquil for parts of that game. So absolutely give them props they deserve. They're a top 5 defense in the NFL right now by DVOA. They are like they're playing fantastic, and they're going to have a huge test on Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. That's going to be fun. I'm going to be interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, and I think one thing that gets lost in this whole Broncos game is that Russell Wilson is actually having a very good year, comparatively speaking to other quarterbacks from a statistical standpoint. And the Chiefs held the Broncos to, I think it was 3.8 yards per play or something along those lines. And in the history of the Chiefs, each decade, if you take each decade's worth of games, they've only lost a couple of games like that every decade usually. And so this was one of them. Obviously, in the 90s, they had more because their defense was insane in the 90s, and they were getting more games, more opportunities to lose. But the Chiefs defense, top 5 unit, and it hurts that Bolton's out because you saw the Broncos had a game plan to attack that. They wanted to run the ball with Williams a lot, and Tranquil, I love him, but his strength is not being a bruiser in the run game. And that's what the Broncos put on the table yesterday. They put Williams out there, let him be a bruiser, hammer some guys. And it worked well for him because they were ripping off, 5, 10 yards a lot of the time, moving the ball on the ground. So that's one thing that I think other opponents are going to notice, and they're going to think that they can take the Chiefs in that way with Bolton being out. I would not be surprised to find or see a heavy dose of the run going forward until Bolton comes back, which honestly speaking, if the Dolphins want to do that without A-Chain playing for them, then I welcome Raheem Mostert taking carries or taking touches away from Waddle and Tyreek Hill and all the other weapons they have on offense. So it was a good day for the Chiefs defense. It's just hard to shut your opponent out whenever you have 5 turnovers. And really, they were consistently put in terrible position in that game, and they did the best they could with what they had, and wasn't good enough at the end of the day.
Yeah, just hats off to the defense. Hope they keep playing that same way. Appreciate that, Sean. All right, Doug, what's going on, man? Trigger warning for Dan the Montana is the dude. Dude, he's been fantastic this season. I think he's going to end the season with 10 plus sacks, and they're going to have to either find a way to pay him, which I don't think they will, or someone else absolutely will. So yes, Mike Dana's been that guy, and we finally got to the point where he's a dude. So I'm loving what I'm seeing, Doug. Appreciate it. What's going on, Robert? Do you guys think we'll re-sign Donovan Smith and go after a true number 1 in the draft? So no, Donovan Smith will not be re-signed. Donovan Smith has not earned his contract for this year. He's not been a great stopgap left tackle. He's going to have to make do for the rest of the season, but no, he's not going to be in Kansas City next year, in my opinion. And do they go after a number 1 in the draft? I don't think they have a choice at this point, but that comes into how are you going to trade up with the draft capital you have now? They're not going to get that true bona fide number 1 at the end of the first round, which is what we still expect them to be. What do you think, Gary? Quickly.
Agree. I don't think Donovan Smith is back next year. I do think that left tackle is a position that they've shown interest in spending money on. So I would not be surprised if that was filled with some free agent that came about. I would be surprised if they chose to go draft at left tackle because of the investment they're trying to protect with Mahomes. You want to go with a sure player. And Donovan Smith has his problems, but he could be much worse.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Robert. All right, James, thank you for the super chat. I'm not going to make excuses for Sky. He obviously has to catch that ball, but maybe the play goes differently if he's thrown the ball earlier when he was open. His confidence and rhythm from that's a good point. It's a very good point. Sky's never been a guy, even throughout his career at Western Michigan, where he's making plays over the shoulder. Like, he's not that kind of guy. Like, that's not necessarily where you want to. I loved the throw. Throw was fantastic. And you can also make the argument that if he's not being pulled down on his left hand, he makes the catch anyway. But you still got to find a way to do that in that situation. And yes, we don't want to make excuses, but I don't think you're wrong. Mahomes missed him open clear as day earlier. Like, he was just open. He didn't throw him the football until it was too late. Granted, again, sometimes you can get away with a throw like that. So what do you think, Gary?
Yeah, thank you, James. Really appreciate you. I think it goes back to a lot we were saying earlier, is that it's a repetition game for these Chiefs receivers, and they need to find whatever mixture works for them, because currently all the different places they're sprinkling players in from is not working. And I think James is 100% right here where he's mentioning confidence. You build confidence through succeeding or having success, and you can build upon that. Right now, whenever you're only having success once or twice a game, it's hard to build on that. You need more opportunities. You need 3, 4, 5 opportunities to have that success, and then you can expand and build upon that. Right now, I would have to think that Sky Moore's in a rough place, and I think that's why Andy Reid, really uncharacteristically for him, brought up the fact that, his left arm was grabbed when he was trying to go for the ball, and made him kind of alligator arm it. He couldn't extend. And Andy Reid very rarely brings up something like that in a press conference if it goes against something that the refs have done, and he did so. And I think that was just for the confidence, for Sky Moore's confidence. He's at a low place right now, and we'll see what he's made of and see how he bounces back. But for me, I'd like to see less cooks in the kitchen for the Chiefs offense, and give an opportunity for a set number of guys to really have some snaps, find some victories, and then build upon that and grow as the season goes on, because it's just too many different, guys in and out of the mix so far this year.
Yeah. When they panned back to Sky on the sideline too, he didn't even say that his arm was grabbed. Like, he said he just lost it. Like, that's another thing. He could have said anything in that moment. He didn't know the camera was on him. And he's talking about how he lost it. Like, that's still accountability to his teammates too. So yeah, don't want to make excuses for him. I think that it's going to be interesting and maybe very, very important to the success of him and the growth of him going forward, how he responds to the game yesterday. Absolutely. Thank you, James, for that super chat. What's going on, Simon? Thank you for the super chat as well. Leave the route running by the wide receiver. What about catching? I mean, the Chiefs have the most drops in the NFL this season. What does that remind you of? 2021, when they had like the most drops through the NFL season again. Like, they were just able to they were not able to catch the football. They're just not able to sometimes. So they go through these moments where they drop the ball a lot. And like Ryan was talking about earlier, they need to get more work on the jugs machine. They just need to. But also, I think that's a lot of rhythm too. Like, this seems like a lot of what we're talking about.
Part of that is throw the ball a lot. The Chiefs throw the ball a lot. They throw the ball accurately a lot, with Mahomes getting the ball on his receivers. And then there's noise too. So I know it looks bad with them leading the league in drops, but there's a reason why the Giants aren't. And it's because they're not hitting receivers as frequently with accurate throws. They're not throwing the ball as much. So it looks bad, yes. It needs to be worked on. But there's also a little bit of noise involved with that, where it's kind of a statistical outlier for a lot of these drops. And I just – if someone held a gun to my head and said, hey, do you think the Chiefs are going to continue to drop this many passes? I would say no, I don't.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's hard to have the most drops in the NFL and have that route, or have that continue to be the problem all season long. Thank you, Siam. Appreciate the super chat again. Michael, what's going on, man? How you doing? With the Broncos punting on a short field, why would Tobe not remind Hardman anything inside the 10, let it go over your head? Well, because Dave Tobe, as we've seen, is an aggressive coach as well. And to be honest, McCall Hardman had room in front of him. It was not like he was swarmed at the point of attack where he dropped that football because someone was getting too close. He dropped it because He was trying to go make a play after the catch, and that's just a mental error. I got nothing else. But also, I mean, we've seen Tobe be this aggressive of a coach, and I'm surprised that we're seeing less kicks being taken out of the end zone this season on kickoffs than we usually have. So honestly, to me, it's just they felt they needed a jolt, and Hardman can provide that.
Yeah, exactly. At that point in the game, the Chiefs were really pressing, and pressing sometimes leads to mistakes like that, and that's all it is. I know, whenever you're in high school, they always tell you, stand on the 10-yard line, goes over your head, don't touch it. But Tobe, like you said, is very aggressive and kind of breaks that fundamental sometimes.
Sometimes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Michael. What's going on, Tibsicle? I think I said that right. At a point in the second half, it felt like we were watching the Broncos or the Chiefs versus the Bucs Super Bowl. I got more of the Colts feeling, but I understand where you're coming from there too. It just seemed like Mahomes had to carry the team to success to be able to get anything done in that game. It was just lots of things happening. Didn't like it.
I was watching the game with my nephews. A couple of my nephews came down, and they said the exact same thing. So it was funny, and I told them, yeah, it is just like the Bucs game, except the Broncos have a losing record. The Chiefs' entire starting offensive line is playing, and this isn't the Super Bowl. So those are like the main differences, but which I felt like made it worse.
Probably did. It probably did. All right, guys, we're going to try to speed through some of these questions here. Any last questions that you want to ask, go ahead and hit the super chats. We'll make sure to get those. But lots of wide receiver talk today. And yes, I see that some people think we're making too many excuses, but I've been hand over foot the whole day on Twitter about how this is much more than just them needing to be held accountable. There's some problems with the coaching staff too, and some just wide receiver issues regardless of what they need to do better of. So thank you for that, Seth. And as a retired special forces veteran, I'll tell anybody anything. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. If you're ever in that situation, I look forward to the answer to that going forward, but appreciate you, man. Yes, please, everyone, just take one real quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you are new to the RGR football channel, love to grow in Chiefs Kingdom, and getting that like out there gets us to more of Chiefs Kingdom as we possibly can, trying to get as many people understanding what we know, at least try to know about football as much as possible. So just take a quick second, hit that like button, and we'll keep going with some more questions here. Michael, appreciate you. More questions in here, man. Why are we still attempting low percentage throws when what we need to do is a first down? Also, for our interior offensive line is so good, why don't we have more design runs for Pacheco? So we did kind of hit on this a little bit earlier about their finesse team, that they don't seem to be comfortable doing that with their offensive line attack the way it is. It's a mentality thing. It comes down to one thing. If they come out, get off the ball, they can get a short yardage run on third and short, fourth and short. They can. It's in here at this point. It's all there, and they don't have the confidence to be able to do that. Am I missing anything there, Gary?
Yeah, Michael, I love this question because you're on the same wavelength as me. I mentioned the precision style offense. 4th and 2, get the first down, and then with Creed Humphrey and Joe Tooney and Trey Smith, there's no reason you should not be mauling guys up front and trying to just, push to get a first down. And heaven forbid if I even bring this up, but at what point in time do the Chiefs consider running a sneak with Mahomes? If they need that short yardage situation. He got hurt on it that one time. Every other time almost every other time that the sneak is ran, it's known as one of the safer plays in football. So maybe let's start to consider it. And I think that at some point in time, Mahomes will run another sneak, and it'll either be in some crazy situation like 4th down in the Super Bowl or some random Thursday night game. You never know with Andy Reid.
I don't think it's ever going to happen personally. I just don't think he's ever going to do it again. I'm sorry. I wish they would too, but appreciate that, Michael, again for that question. Justin, I want Adam Thielen, a perfect cheap vet that can run routes and move chains. okay. As long as you're not giving up anything more than like a 6th round pick for Adam Thielen. I just don't. Adam Thielen is getting up there now. And yeah, he'd be a cheap vet for sure. He's doing a good job. But also, want to know something he's getting in Carolina that he's not getting in Kansas City? Volume. We've seen that. Like, he's not getting the volume to do much. So, I don't know. I don't have the answers for the wide receiver if they end up trading for one. I wouldn't be mad about Adam Thielen, Justin. Thank you for that. KL, welcome back. What's going on? With the injuries at linebacker, do we try some of the rookies to fill in for our cornerback 3, Watson and Williams? Both seem to be struggling. I'm trying to figure out what the linebacker injuries are doing here with the Watson and Williams. I don't think you want to try out your rookies at the outside position, because the one guy that plays in the cornerback room is Nick Jones, who is a slot cornerback, and he's not going to be able to play on the outside. And then Chamari Connor is also not an outside cornerback, so they don't really have anybody to bring in there as a rookie that would be able to fill in on the outside. They just kind of need to get healthy, and they need to play a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe where this question's going is that they should look at more kind of hybrid dime looks with more of a aggressive type third safety or third cornerback who can play more of that tackling role. And, I wouldn't be surprised if Spags tried that some more. Not having Bolton there is going to hurt, though. And it's hard to get around that. Tranquil, really good at coverage, really high IQ, knows where to be. But whenever it comes to getting downhill and, nailing a running back, he can do it, but it's not what he's best at. And he can't do it at the level that Nick Bolton can. I think there's things Tranquil can do that Bolton can't. But that's where it is now, and it's going to be hard to find someone to fill that role. So I wouldn't be surprised if Spags tries a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think that interpretation of the question is much better than mine. So, yes, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm with Gary on that. But he does, Spags runs the most dime and base packages in the NFL, funny enough. So they're already doing a lot of that, specifically, even with their healthy linebacker room. So, yeah, they're probably still going to keep doing that. Appreciate the question, KL. We're going to lump a question together here. There was another one in the chat about running back. So, Justin, with another one here. Thank you for the question, man. I would go after running back in the trade market and start running it more with Pacheco as the one new guy to spell him for screens with McKinnon. So I don't think you can really afford to trade. Oh, hello. Hey, sweetie. What's going on? You're very cute. Oh, all right. So I don't think you can really afford to trade for a running back. I think that they're going to be sticking it out with who they have on the roster and then drafting one. You don't really want to be trading draft capital for a running back in this economy. I don't think it makes any sense. You with me there, Gary?
Yeah, unless you can trade, like a backup third string cornerback for a running back that has some upside. I wouldn't want to give up any draft capital for a running back, particularly because the Chiefs don't have a lot of it next season. They've only got 5 picks next year, last I heard. And so it's just not a good market for it right now for the Chiefs to make a move like that.
I'm with you. All right, everyone say goodnight to my daughter. Oh, geez. Good night. And there she goes. Thank you, sweetie. Good night. All right. Appreciate that, Justin. All right. Info, how's it going, man? Casey has been horrible at the return game for years, regardless of the returner. When will Tobe take heat for encouraging returns within the 10-yard line that most teams are taught to let go? They've always had an aggressive mindset. So I don't necessarily think that they've been terrible in the return game. They've probably had more muffs than I think any team over the last few seasons, and that's not necessarily based off of the aggressiveness either. It's just the people back there that aren't returners. Sky Moore, not a punt returner, and they decided to go forth with him anyway, and it ended up not working. And you have McCole Hardman, who, probably was a punt returner, but that's just tracking. Ball tracking. They don't have right now a guy out there besides McCole and Kadarius, to be honest, who were punt returns in college and doing a lot of that stuff and developing a lot of that. So they don't want to use Kadarius Toney in that situation. And McCole Hardman he's got the muff right now, but he also had an extremely useful punt return 2 games ago against the Chargers. So I don't necessarily agree with you that they've been terrible or horrible at their return game. Inopportune? Yes. Situational mistakes? Yes. I don't think horrible is the word I would use.
Yeah. Live by the punt return, die by the punt return.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you, Info. I hope that maybe you get back on the same speed that we're at with maybe horrible isn't the right word. What's going on, Kip? Thank you for another question here. I'll tell Andy that when we go for fourth near the end zone. You know what? I'm trying. Andy, I know sometimes you listen, you watch, you take in what we say. I asked you to run more draws earlier in the season, and you did it. You listened. So I think we can have a communication here where you don't always need to overthink it. Use the simplest answer to some of these short and fourth down situations. Let it happen. I hope he ends up listening. What's going on, DJ? What's going on with Tony? He doesn't seem like the same player he was last year with the Chiefs. Could it be the injuries? Possibly. I think that's a possibility. But he's also not even being used in the same way that he was being used last year. He's being used almost exclusively as a gimmick player this year. Week 1 was last year's usage. And he had the drops. Yeah, it was tough to watch. And then the Chiefs said, we're going to put you in a little box and not let you do any of this again. Sometimes you have to let the cat out of the bag or the player out of the box. If you want the best Kadarius Toney, you might have to risk him getting hurt again to get that out of him. They threw him balls down the field last year. Remember the Bengals, the AFC Championship game? He nearly brought in that touchdown grab. He nearly brought it in. He has not been throwing the ball down the field once since week 1. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know either, Dan. That one's totally got me stumped.
Yeah, it's a question that I can't really answer. I don't know how they feel about him. I don't, because they seem to love the person that he is. Like they talk about he's a great kid and stuff like that, which I mean it's a 180 from his time in New York. But I don't know. DJ, I wish I had the answers. If I had the answers, the Chiefs would have the answers. You know, it'd be a very great thing. If I had them, I know they would have them. So it's only a question I wish I could answer, but alas, I cannot. Tyler, what's going on? Dan, I'm just now learning about Coburn. What happened? I know Ryan was pretty high on him. Why did we get rid of him without even putting him in a game yet? So Chiefs thought they could be sneaky. The Chiefs thought they could take a 6th-round draft pick and waive him and nobody would claim him. And it almost worked because the Broncos were low on the claim bar. They were low on it. But guess what? It only takes one team. Can't be sneaky in the NFL as much as you might want to be. They got caught with their hand in the cookie jar a little bit there. They thought they could get Coburn down to the practice squad without anyone claiming him, and it didn't work out. They had a lot of players that play inside and outside, and they felt that he had the best chance of getting down to the practice squad. Apparently, they were wrong. Very wrong about that. I was also quite high. I was very high on what he could be later, but we're not going to get to see that because he's going to go play in Denver for a little while.
Yeah, and that was frustrating because I enjoyed watching him in the preseason. I thought there was some potential there. So just rough deal, and that's a symptom of having a good roster. You know, you need to make room for somebody and try to do something sneaky. You probably thought that maybe there wasn't anyone else on the roster you'd rather try to do that with, and they got caught. Yeah,
it's tough. Sometimes you overthink it. Like I think the Chiefs overthought that much, like they overthink some of their situations on 3rd and 4th short. Like that, just sometimes you can overthink a situation, and it definitely feels like they did that. So I wish we had a better answer for you, Tyler, but unfortunately we don't. Let's give some flowers here, right? Now, so Doug, thank you for this. Furious George is coming into his own. It looks great this season. Now, yes, George is he has the second most sacks in his draft class outside of Aiden Hutchinson. And he was the 5th defensive end drafted, if I'm not mistaken. Those are great numbers to have as the 5th guy taken when the second one is the one that leads, and the first one's not even in the area, even in the same area code with sacks. So you're doing a good job there. I think the big thing here is that Ryan was talking about it last night, is that the hand usage is finally coming in. He looked like Tamba on some of those rips, and where he's really emphasizing the rip through, and it's it's opening up. Because when you take that hand and you rip underneath and you lift, and it's not just like a half-assed rip where you end up underneath the arm, when you bring it all the way through, what does that do? Well, it opens up your shoulders. When you can open up your shoulders and get down, you can then corner. It's allowing him to corner a little bit better. So I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with what we're seeing.
Yeah, and remember last year, Karlaftis was 21 years old. And that's still pretty young to be a starting defensive end in the NFL. And he still got, I think, 6.5 sacks last year as a rookie. And that was 13th most of all time for that age. So even though he was very young, he still had decent production. And I'm not saying he's going to be the 13th best pass rusher of all time, but the talent is there. And we're seeing that. I think he has, 6 sacks now in 8 games, and could be double-digit sacks. And he seems like a player that's only going to get better as the season goes on and it gets colder, just because his conditioning is so great. He never seems to get tired out there. So Furious George, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does, and I'm glad he's in Kansas City.
Yeah, I think he's going to be developing very nicely over this season, and I'm excited to see what he does next year. We're going to end the show here on the last 2 super chats before we get on out of here and get you guys on your way on a Monday night. Ryan, just being the great guy that he is, thank you so much for super chatting your own show, Ryan. That's dedication right there. Appreciate that, and you're great. So we're happy to be here because of you. So everyone, nice round of applause for Ryan for putting it in his own show. It's fantastic. Got to put it in somewhere, right? Thank you, Ryan, very, very much. All right, last one here. This is a good one to end the show on, I think, to get us ready for next week. Kind of put everything behind us. You guys, we talked a lot about the wide receivers, and if you missed it, go back to the beginning of the show where we talked about that. Steeman right here with a good question. Great. Thank you for the super chat. Miami is flying to Germany now. The Chiefs are waiting to fly Thursday night is wrong. Ask Buffalo about flying late to England. So the Chiefs had done, and there's a lot of NFL research about this specific situation. There's a lot of evidence and research that says that flying now and letting your body acclimate is too difficult. If you get there whenever you get there later in the week, don't let their body adjust to the time zone, stuff like that. Let them be on it is. That's the thing they're going with. I don't know if you have any thoughts about this, Gary, but I don't know enough about the actual science behind it to give a real opinion. Any game could be a fluke. The Bills could have just had a bad game. You don't really know. What do you think?
I think that Andy Reid is trying to do what he always does, which is maintain the routine, follow the process, and stick to the timeline as strictly as possible. And doing that in Kansas City is better for the Chiefs in terms of sticking to that routine, because your circadian rhythm's not going to get out of sync. You're going to be getting up at the same time. You're going to sleep at the same time. And then when you travel out, it'll be like you're playing a game at 8 a.m, just like you are here in the United States. He might even have directed the team, or they might even have like a directive not to participate in the day-to-day activities in Germany. They're just there to play football, get in and get out. I wouldn't recommend going there and then staying up until sundown in Germany. I would say try to keep your schedule the same as it is in the United States. And by doing that for 2 days, you can kind of get away with that by shutting the curtains in your hotel room, doing different things to trick your body that it's night and not falling into that trap of adjusting. So if the Bills are going there, I think was it on Monday? Or sorry, the Dolphins are going there Monday. They're going to try to give their body time to acclimate. And the thought is that maybe because of what happened in the Jaguars-Bills game, that the Chiefs are at a disadvantage because Jacksonville had that time to acclimate themselves. But you got to think the reverse of that. Jacksonville came back. I think they came back after a bye, right? If I remember correctly. And they played just as well. And also Jacksonville versus everyone not named the Chiefs. I think they're 10-0 in the last 10 games. So to sit here and act like or think that Buffalo had a down game versus the Jaguars, Buffalo could have played their best game against the Jaguars, and Jaguars were just better than them. that day. I wouldn't accredit that to any kind of jet lag. I would think that would be more related to the Jaguars just being a really good team, and Chiefs fans haven't really seen that, because every time we see the Jaguars, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we shut him out. We did really good against Trevor Lawrence and we won the game. That hasn't been the case for all other 31 NFL teams or 30 NFL teams. So I don't really think that the Chiefs going and trying to stick to their schedule is bad. I don't think it's a mistake. Now, if the Chiefs go out and get blown out and Miami left earlier, then maybe I'll start to think there's more to it. But one game is not quite enough, or 2 games is not quite enough. You need more evidence.
Yeah, I think that the Jags played there 2 weeks in a row too. So like that was their second week against the Bills. Like it was their second week there too. So that's a whole different thing. It's a whole different topic to talk about. But this is, like I said, a good springboard for getting us into the week. We're going to get into the film on Wednesday, and thank you again for the super chat, Steeman. Appreciate that. Nice little getting us into the next week for Miami Dolphins, because they absolutely need to get going with that. So you guys, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Like I said, we're going to have film for you guys on Wednesday. Seth should be tomorrow. Seth, and then you have Gary on Thursday. We'll do the game plan on Friday. Set you guys up for the week, and then early Sunday game in Germany. I hope you guys enjoyed the Q&A. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Gary. Glad to have you on board with it for the Q&A, even though Ryan had to step out. I'm glad you guys were all here with us tonight. So we'll say good night to you now, and hope you have a good night, Gary.
Guten Nacht.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Have a good night.